Welcome, Luminauts, to another episode of Montessori Meetup. Today, we're talking about how children can develop a connection with nature and why this is important. Nature is an incredibly important aspect of a Montessori education because connecting with nature is an important step of every child's development. Children need to spend time outdoors on a regular basis and learn how to be good stewards of the environment. Time spent outdoors develops a child's sense of wonder and appreciation for the world and helps them to engage with all five of their senses in a way that's very different from being inside. However, for those of us in urban environments, getting out and exploring the natural world can be a challenge. Our guests today are Jake Poinsett and Keegan Hassett from the Trinity River Audubon Center, which is located in southern Dallas. Welcome, Jake and Keegan.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a bit about your roles at the Trinity River Audubon Center?
Sure. I'm the program manager at the Audubon Center. So my job is all about environmental education for students from kindergarten to college. Also public programs for people to build their own relationships with nature via bird walks, guided nature hikes, presentations, programs for families on the weekend. And also we play a big part in our education team with habitat management and conservation in general. Making sure that the plant communities are healthy enough for the wildlife to be there.
And I am the center assistant. So for me, that really means supporting all of the activities of our education team and making sure that we're connecting with the community in a variety of ways, from events to programs to outreaches. And sometimes you may even find me at the front desk.
That's really neat. And I'm sure you have jobs that a lot of people would find enviable.
It's a lot of fun.
Having the opportunity to be outside so much of the time. When you were a kid, did you have an interest in the natural world?
I did. I feel super lucky. My mom is a big bird nerd, so that got me into being a bird nerd. So growing up playing in the woods where I'm from in South Jersey, grew up in the Pine Barrens, so it was an easy place to explore and fall in love with nature.
Yeah.
And just continued for the rest of my life. So I've been in the conservation field for about 11 years now. But I can thank my childhood.
Very cool. What about you, Keegan?
I actually grew up about 1.5 miles from the Audubon Center.
Oh, wow.
So for me, coming to work is sometimes a lot like coming home to my old backyard. And it is nostalgic, and I love it.
Did either of you expect that you'd be working for a place like Trinity River Audubon when you grew up?
My mom is also a member of Audubon, so I've always had the Audubon clock. So it's kind of like this is awesome. Let me apply for the National Audubon Society.
Sure.
But if you told me a million years ago that I'd be living in Texas, I wouldn't expect it. But now it's my home and I love it. I don't want to go anywhere else.
Great. What about you?
I took a pretty circuitous route and had a career in advertising for many years, and then decided to come back to what really matters to my heart and my values. And I'm so happy to be where I am with the team at Trinity River.
Wonderful.
We got a solid crew.
It seems like it. I will say I have been to Trinity River several times. It's a wonderful place. So I think we're all very jealous of you and the time that you get to spend there because it's really beautiful. Now, the Trinity River Audubon Center is located within the city limits of Dallas. And some listeners might be surprised to learn that such a large natural area exists in one of the biggest urban environments, in the U.S. and in North America. Could you tell us a little bit more about the Audubon Center and how you all get started?
Sure. So where we're located is actually in the largest urban bottomland hardwood forest in the country, which is mind-blowing. Like you mentioned, it's in Dallas. But 6,000 acres altogether. It's called the Great Trinity Forest. And we manage 120 acres of the Great Trinity Forest. But it's more than just the bottomland hardwood plant community. There's blackland prairie. There's a variety of ephemeral wetlands. So it's very, very biodiverse. But it wasn't always the beautiful wildlife refuge that it is. It used to be something a little different.
Yeah, it actually started out as an illegal landfill.
Wow.
Which is unfortunate, but I think really a poignant point for the city of Dallas to remember that this wasn't always the nature sanctuary that it is. Back in the late 90s, the city actually had a group of citizens that were widely involved and said, we don't want to be a trash dump anymore. They worked with a lawyer within the city of Dallas to take the owner to court. And as part of that settlement, the land was deeded back to the city. So we are really, as Audubon, stewards of that land and have been active in helping get it back to the state that it's in now.
Yep.
Wow.
So it's a unique history. It was disrespected, neglected for so long, but it's a great story. If you give nature a chance to thrive, it will come back. And all thanks to our local communities who said enough is enough.
Right. And I mean, really inspiring, I think, because sometimes you look around and you think, are we ever going to get back to a point, right, where we have where we're taking better care of the environment? And it sounds like you all are a shining example of how you can turn things around in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, the center opened in 2008, and the restoration is ongoing. It'll be going on forever, but that's the fun part, just seeing what's different each season, what birds are returning, what different organisms are utilizing the property different times a year. But yeah, with the restoration, it's never one and done. So we're just happy that the community stepped up and did something about it.
Right. Well, as an organization that is in an urban environment, I'd imagine that you work with a lot of kids from the Dallas area who maybe have limited access to the outdoors in general. How do you work with kids in a kind of an introductory way of getting them outside?
Sure, yeah. The Audubon Center is the most wild place that many of these students have ever seen. So our programs are inquiry-based. So they're just learning things by asking questions, figuring things out on their own, and it's all via facilitated dialogue. Like, we have the answer, but we want them to figure it out on their own. And it's always fun to see the students with their aha moment where like a light bulb pops up above their head, like, oh my goodness, this all makes sense. This is so exciting. Right. And just letting them understand that we're part of this ecosystem too. So like you mentioned before, building a stewardship and understanding why it's important to take care of these places.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's really inspiring to watch a group of students come in to the center and, first of all, take in the building, which is, really sort of majestic and frames the views of nature outside. And then by the end of their trip, they're leaving, they're going out the doors, talking to each other about, did you know that turtles do this? And did you know that the water, it really is a transformation, and they do really take charge of the knowledge that they leave with, which is very cool to see.
It's fun because everybody has a little bit of a scientist in them, and you can see with some of the students that they really take into the scientific method or the ways that we explore and try to figure out the different adaptations of plants and animals. It's just fun to see it all develop. Right.
And what are some of the strategies that you specifically use to help kids get that spark?
Sure. Our most popular field trip is the Eco Investigations field trip, and there's different components involved where there's a guided nature hike where we identify the plants and animals that we find on the trail. It's always different whenever you go out into our trail system. And then we make the connections, where students are allowed to make the connections of the different organisms that are relying on one another. And we try to make it relatable. Like, hey, we have our H-E-B or our Kroger or our Home Depot. This is everything that the native plants and animals need right here. And then another part of the program is our aquatic investigation, where they learn about water quality by catching macroinvertebrates found in our pond, and then to figure out if our pond is clean or polluted. And then to tie it all in, that we all rely on the river, not just the wildlife, but believe it or not, we do too. So it's important to keep it clean. Then another part of the program is our live animal encounter, where they learn about animal adaptations, and they get to meet the true star of the Audubon Center.
Sheldon, our three-toed box turtle.
He's always the grand finale, and all the kids get so excited to see Sheldon.
I mean, he is, I work with a lot of fabulous people, but he is truly one of my favorite coworkers to visit.
Aww.
He's the boss. It's all up to Sheldon.
Well, and to clarify for those of us listening, what is a macroinvertebrate?
Sure. So it is a large, so macro, we can see with our eyes. We don't need a microscope. And an invertebrate, so doesn't have a vertebrae like we do. So it's these exoskeletons that they have to molt. So a lot of times we're catching dragonfly larvae or fun beetles, really unique things like water scorpions, and everything's safe. We always tell the kids.
Water scorpions.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We always tell the kids that we are the biggest, scariest animals out here. So as long as you don't bother them, they will not bother you. The only time I've ever been bit or stung is because I was trying to pick something up. And on our watch, no one's ever been injured. So, yeah.
Well, that's pretty good. It's a pretty good track record you have there so far.
We plan to keep it that way.
Yeah, let's keep it going.
Yeah.
So Why do you personally think that the work that you do with children and families is important? What kind of an impact do you think that has long term?
They're the next generation of conservation leaders, and things that we all care about. It's up to them to keep it going and to preserve these wild spaces, these wild places, and all the animals that rely on them, and to understand the ecosystem services that these habitats provide to us, since we're a part of this ecosystem. And then in this critical time of their lives, in this early childhood development, being in nature, you're more self-confident, better decision-making skills, physically and mentally healthier, and also just builds an empathy, like where people can understand, like, wow, it's not just me out here. And
right.
They understand. So these are all really important skills that later on in life will be really useful. So not just for nature, but for them as individuals as well.
It is. It's very important, I think, for us to establish that connection, that we are all in this ecosystem together. And it's really a lot more difficult to not care about or be disrespectful to a neighbor that you've met, even if that neighbor happens to be a grasshopper.
Good point.
Right.
Good point.
And I think too, as a Montessori organization, that aspect of empathy really affects all of the work that we do and what we think is incredibly important about early education, developing those sensibilities really young so that it then, feeds all of the rest of the decisions that a child can make for the rest of their life. So that's interesting.
And even with students we work with that are older in high school and in college, and with our public programs, if we don't make a career conservationist out of the program, that's fine. But maybe if they develop a new hobby or an interest, or tell a friend, like, hey, I learned the coolest thing about this bird. Would you want to come bird watching with me sometime? Just sparking those little interests.
Sure.
It is. I think watching, especially our education team, it really is this awakening of that knowledge and almost a, immediate protective quality that comes over, especially our younger visitors. And they realize that they really do have a powerful responsibility. And it's inspiring to watch them come into that and, walk out of there with maybe a little bit more awareness to what's around them and what they're a part of.
For sure.
So let's pretend that I'm a parent. I live in an apartment with very little outdoor space, but I want to start building a habit within my own children of getting them connected with the natural environment, of getting them to notice the things in the outdoors. How do I go about doing that?
For sure. There's so many ways to dive in and really get started. And it can be intimidating. If there's, someone trying to plan a trip and they're thinking about, I got to get the map and go from point A to point B, all this gear. But all you really need to do is find a local park, and there's plenty in Dallas. We are a bird city, and that's thanks to many of our green spaces we have. And just, spend some time under a tree. It'll be pretty exciting to see how active the world is around you.
Right.
And then you can use your apps if you'd like, your smartphone. There's so many things that you could use as a tool to learn more about nature. For birds specifically, Merlin. We always tell people download Merlin, and it can identify the bird calls around you. And then you can also, with a feature, like identify what the bird is by its size, its colors, time of year. So it's a fun way to get into birding. But also another app called iNaturalist, where you can identify the different plants and bugs and whatever's around you. And it kind of makes it more fun, especially for kids. It's like a scavenger hunt. It's like, wow, I've got all these things I've identified. They're saved on my phone, saved on my iPad.
Right.
So there's a lot of different ways for you to do it, just you and your family, but also there's online resources. The National Wildlife Federation has a really great list of resources for parents to get their students involved in nature. And then Audubon, we have our Audubon Adventures. And of course, come join us at the center for our public programs. Take these tips and tricks home and do them in your own local park.
We definitely love to invite folks to a guided program or experience at the Audubon Center. If they are just starting out, it can be a great foundation for just mindset things to think about as you then kind of explore your own environment. But also worth noting that even if you are, in an apartment and you may not even have an exterior balcony or something like that, we, as Jake mentioned, in a bird city, there are a lot of observations that you can do directly from within your home. And then, of course, we encourage you to get outside and, connect that as well. But it's worth noting that the act of observation itself is extremely important to everything that we do.
For sure.
And can I clarify, what is a bird city? How do you get that designation?
It's something we should all be really proud of. It's really cool. In joint partnership with Texas Parks and Wildlife and Audubon, Texas, who Keegan and I work for, cities, municipalities, townships can apply to become a bird city, and they're graded on a specific criteria. Depending on how much green space you have, if there's habitat management plans, if there's education and outreach involved, and just trying to promote why these green spaces are important. And Dallas was one of the first bird cities in Texas. Yeah.
Wow, impressive.
Yeah, pretty cool.
We should rest on our laurels more about that.
Yeah.
What are some of the birds that you think are maybe easy to identify for the beginning bird watcher, or maybe a child who's early elementary age?
I mean, fan favorite for birders first getting into it, or for the students that come out to the center, is the northern cardinal. Just that bright red. It's always exciting. It's kind of easy to spot because it's so colorful, and it's found in so many different habitats, urban environments, in the wilderness, wherever. And it's a bird feeder bird. So if you set up a bird feeder on a balcony, put some seed out, you might get a cardinal to really be that spark bird to start a young birder.
Yeah, I would add to that, keeping it colorful, blue jays as well.
True.
Plenty of those here in Dallas, and easily identified by that blue on their feathers, and really, once again, another feeder bird that you can see right in your own backyard.
That's true. And then in Texas, we have so many different species of bird that pass through during migration, that are here year round. Some will only stay for the winter, some just for the summer. So when you get more into bird watching, birding, and just going to explore, it's cool to see all the different species that are here seasonally. It's always fun.
And what do you think are some of the things, for us with outdoor spaces? What are some of the things that we can do to make a positive impact on our own environment?
Sure. Things that we can do, positive impact on our environment. Education's a big thing. Just teaching people that we have these resources, and the fact that Dallas is even a bird city. There's so many places to go explore, different bird walks you can join, different birding clubs, organizations that you can foster a larger appreciation for nature. So I think just the exposure and the education is a great way to start.
I'd also say, another thing that we get a lot of questions about at the center from different visitors is, how can I make my own space bird friendly? If I do have a space to plant, how can I help out? And, a great way to do that is planting native plants. And there are, luckily many, many resources here in Dallas for native plants. We also at Audubon, on our website, we do have a native plant finder where you can type in your location and it will help you out by giving you a list. And there are options from seed or transplant, but ultimately that's a huge help in terms of habitat.
Oh yeah. And also another way to just fall in love with another part of nature is just the plants are the base. And just to see you grow something from seed, especially for kids that help us in our greenhouse, that feeling of ownership and accountability. I created this plant, I started it, and now I'm going to continue to take care of it. That's a fun way to get in love with nature.
A lot of what we talk about too is discipline, and the discipline that it takes to grow something from seed and to take care of something else and really be thinking about that is a really important skill to develop as well. So for you all at the Audubon Center, I know you mentioned your eco-investigations as an option for people to take advantage of. What are some of the other programs that people from the Dallas area could take their kids to?
Yeah. So we have our academic programs, like our eco-investigations, and there's more for different age groups. But on the weekends throughout the year, we have our second Saturday guided nature hike, our third Saturday guided bird walk, and our second Sunday Science Sunday, which is perfect for families to come out and learn about a different science topic each Sunday. And then throughout the year, there's always some fun activities and events coming up. And we got a bunch of stuff in September that we're excited about.
We do. I mean, everything from, you just recently did a native plant walk, talking about what's edible in our environment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Edible plants, medicinal plants, things that are, culturally relevant. So really a lot of great resources of native plants in our area.
And then, we try to just stay seasonal. So if there's an opportunity for us to highlight something that's going on seasonally here for us in the Metroplex, we like to do that through programs. Coming up, actually, in first week of September here, we have a sort of community science initiative, but also a chance for folks to experience the Audubon Center at night, which is not always something that happens. And this program will be for counting chimney swifts. And I'll let Jake speak to why that's important.
I'm very curious.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. So September 7th, we are going to congregate outside of our chimney swift tower, which was constructed by the North Texas Master Naturalists, and try to document as many chimney swifts as we can. They start to congregate when they're getting ready to migrate south. And it's a really unique bird that has kind of co-evolved with us. So they originally would roost in tree cavities and open savanna and prairie habitats, but as their habitats started to disappear, they started to utilize our chimneys and human-made structures.
Wow.
Yeah, but as our construction methods started to change and people didn't really want birds in their chimneys, now they're also starting to disappear again. So as a community scientist, we can try to count how many birds we have that are passing through and help ornithologists better understand the population of these birds and also where they're going, because they're long-distance migrants that go all the way down to southern South America, which is just such a cool, fascinating thing. No passport needed, no TSA. They're just in the air and they're flying.
Yeah. And they're fascinating little birds, but just the act of counting them is helpful for a much larger initiative. And I think that's just a great example of something that is really accessible, but ultimately helping out a, large scientific effort.
Yeah.
Well, for those who might be listening to the podcast instead of watching, could you let us know what your website is so that we can go check out some more programs?
Absolutely. It is www.trinityriver.audubon.org.
Great. And you have lots of information on programs, native plants. Anything else people might want to know is that admission to the Trinity River Audubon Center is free through the end of December of this year. Is that correct?
That is correct. We are very thrilled that this year for 2023, we've been able to offer free admission. One of our big tenets is to be able to welcome anyone who wants to come through our doors. And this has allowed us to see so many new faces. So we are very excited through the end of 2023 to be able to offer that to anyone who wants to come by.
And you can register online for free, buy a free ticket on our website too. Yeah.
Great. Well, that's an incredible opportunity. And I want to thank you both, Jake and Keegan, for being here today. It's really great to talk to you about this. I hope our listeners take advantage of all the opportunities that you have and get a little bit more into bird watching. So thank you both so much. Appreciate having you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks to our listeners. We hope you join us soon for another episode of Montessori Meetup.